Welcome to another edition of the Bff Show. My name is Brendan.
I'm Franco.
And Franco, how are you doing, sir? This is post-Thanksgiving. Hopefully you had a restful Thanksgiving break. I want to ask about training. I think we will absolve you of your sin of maybe not training on Thanksgiving because most people don't. But real quick, what's the updates that you've got for this week about your coming race in January?
Sure. You were correct. I did not train on Thanksgiving, but the day before Thanksgiving, I put in 10 miles. So we have that. Training's going pretty well. We talked last time about my lack of CrossFitting because sometimes CrossFit's just not fun. But I went twice this week already. We're only 2 days in. I've already put in over, if we include Sunday, 16 miles. So looking pretty good. This week's going to be my big week. Planning to hit 64 miles this week.
All right, very cool, man. What's the website again that people can donate?
It's Franco's Frozen Otter Run, and we'll put it on the screen as well.
Right here.
Just like that.
Just like that.
And big news, actually. We just crested over $1,000 in donations, but we need to break 5,000. So we're 1/5 of the way there with 2 months.
I have yet to donate, but I'm probably not going to push you to 5,000 with one donation just to put it out there, buddy.
I accept that.
I'm sorry. Or what if I could? What if I couldn't? Let's talk about the big news in the NFL. You know, maybe it's not a huge deal anywhere besides New York, but since we both lived in New York, we both saw Eli Manning play quite a bit for the Giants. The Giants making well, I don't want to put a disclaimer on this decision yet. I want to get your opinion, but they made a decision today to bench Eli Manning and played Geno Smith instead. But the qualifier here was the original plan was to have Eli start the half, and then they told him, regardless of how he was playing, Geno Smith would come in. Eli declined and said, if you're going to, essentially said, to paraphrase, if you're going to start the backup anyway, you might as well just start him the whole time. So the Giants, for the first time since 2004, are no longer rolling with Eli Manning as their starting quarterback.
Yeah, rather shocking. I mean, if you kind of take away the streak of games started, it's not that big of a deal. They're obviously out of the playoffs. There's no way they can mathematically get in. And they're kind of playing for a top pick. So why not start the backup, theoretically save Eli for next year, and have him get there healthy? That's one scenario. I don't think that's the actual scenario. But if you're a New York fan, that'd probably feel good to think, right?
I guess. I mean, I think it's kind of frustrating because I've talked about quarterback play in general, from why teams aren't going after Colin Kaepernick, who's better than almost half the starting quarterbacks in the league right now. And then you have this scenario where you have Eli Manning, who, I don't think he is the greatest or the best right now. But when you look at what other teams have, he's certainly better than they are. And you're talking about teams like Jaguars and honestly Tennessee Titans at this point with Marcus Mariota, who's struggling a little bit. You could make a solid argument that Eli is better, if not on the same level as those guys, but they have their jobs. I think the history also works against this a lot because Eli Manning, beloved in New York, won 2 Super Bowls. It's just the narrative is odd. And I think the other thing that's infuriating is that it's not as though he was benched for who will be the starting quarterback of the future. This isn't a Kurt Warner, Eli Manning situation back in 2004 where it was clear Eli was going to be the future. They're essentially benching their 2-time quarterback, Super Bowl winning franchise quarterback for Geno Smith, a guy who is most famous for getting punched out in New York and playing with the Jets. A guy that is not by any means a starting quarterback, doesn't have the stats to back it up, is a journeyman quarterback. And I think that's what adds a little extra salt in the wound if you're a Giants fan or just in general in football, because to me doesn't make sense when you put all that together, Franco.
I think we differ on opinions on this one. I don't think Geno Smith's gotten his fair shake at a quarterback. I think we don't really know what he is. He was part of a pretty dysfunctional Jets regime. Not that the Giants are any better, but we've never really seen what he could be and can't be. So I think the jury's still kind of out on that. As far as starting Davis Webb right now, I don't think Webb is ready. And in some ways, this is keeping Webb kind of safe. You don't want to expose him, again, with a bad offensive line, bad running game, no receivers. So Geno Smith's really the least of the evils. I mean, I think the biggest question is, do you think Eli's in New York next year?
I don't think he is. I think that you can't. I think this reminds me of what older brother Peyton went through with the Colts, where he was sidelined, Andrew Luck came in, and then now you had Peyton going to Denver, who essentially needed a quarterback to get a Super Bowl, and it worked. I don't know if that's going to happen with Eli Manning, but I am looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars, who I don't think they particularly believe that Blake Bortles is their franchise quarterback. You also have Tom Coughlin, who works down there, that could easily make that move happen. But it is kind of, I'm curious because I don't know if you can bring him back. I think that there's a psychological element where if you happen to see the news conference where Eli Manning was talking in the locker room, not a news conference, excuse me.
Yeah.
Very emotional. And it is emotional of course it's emotional because he's been there for so long. I don't know if you could come back from that if you are the Giants and in all honesty, go to Eli and say, hey, sorry about what happened. We want to see what we got with Geno Smith, who also Geno Smith is going to be a free agent. So it's not as though they necessarily have this guy for long. They could re-sign him, I guess. But to me, this also reeks of them wanting to tank. And I think that they realize that they could probably just tank their way to at least a top 3, top 4 pick. Not from all intents and reports and radio that I've listened to and reports I've read that this is a great quarterback draft that's coming up. But I don't know. Do you think they're tanking Franco? I don't know. This seems a tankish move to do.
I don't think they're like full on tanking, but I do think there's an aspect of this where it's what's the worst that could happen? Geno Smith fails. We know what we got in Geno Smith, and we have a high draft pick. I don't think it's like a deliberate move, but I think it's one of those silver linings they're kind of going to catch on. And I do think that we might see Eli Manning in Jacksonville for one last run with Coughlin. Or wouldn't it be something we saw Eli Manning in Denver for one last run?
That's a great point.
I would love to see that, but we've already given Eli Manning much more consideration than the Giants organization did this week. So where are we going next?
I like that you are the segue master. You're just cutting into like, stop talking about Eli Manning. I get it. Transitioning to a weird story, at least in my opinion, Franco, that came out over the weekend. Over the weekend, a lot of coaching. The carousel of coaches is in full swing for college football. We don't talk a lot about college football on this show, but in this case, we will, because a very interesting, weird story came about. Greg Schiano, who was formerly the coach of Rutgers College, and also was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach for a while, failed spectacularly there, was, for all intents and purposes, tapped to be the head coach of the University of Tennessee. However, fans, boosters alike of Tennessee, and many media pundits came out and said, this is a guy that was connected to the Jerry Sandusky case when he was an assistant coach back at Penn State. So I want to read from an ESPN article because given the circumstances, I want to make sure that I get it right. So according to this ESPN article, Schiano worked as an assistant under defensive coordinator Sandusky at Penn State from 1990 to 1995. There's a deposition that many fans were citing that includes Penn State assistant coach Mike McQueary's testimony that another Penn State coach, Tom Bradley, had told McQueary that Schiano had talked of seeing Sandusky abusing a boy in the early 1990s. Schiano was never implicated by any other party over the course of the Sandusky investigation. So there have been some folks in the media that have come out and defended Schiano, saying that he was never implicated, that he was unsure of what to do, and you have obviously a fan base that would not stand for that. And now you have Schiano, who is not in the job at all, and you have a lot of the University of Tennessee now is trying to save face and I think come up with other reasons to not hire him for fear of a lawsuit. There was just a report that said the University of Tennessee chancellor never signed the memorandum of understanding between Schiano and the University of Tennessee. Therefore, it was an invalid offer. I don't know if you really put that news out there now, unless you're just trying to insulate yourself from a lawsuit. So, Franco, I take me through what your thought process was, because this is one of those things that happened to me primarily on social media, where Twitter started and Greg Schiano started trending, then all of a sudden this thing just erupted out of nowhere.
I mean, Yeah, it unfolded quickly, which is pretty impressive, which shows you the kind of world we kind of live in now with social media affecting sports. I'm a little torn. I don't know if it's fair necessarily to condemn Shiano without the full story. But at the same note, Tennessee kind of had to know the environment they're in right now, especially with everything coming out with sexual assault in Hollywood and in sports. It really wasn't a smart decision to go that direction in the first place. And Shiano, unfortunately, is going to bear the brunt of that, guilty or innocent. I do think they covered their rear end enough legally to avoid a lawsuit. And I think this will go away sooner than later, mostly because I don't think Shiano wants to stay out there and have his name continually tapped on this one. And his future in sports is actually kind of up in the air, so we'll see what happens with him in that way. I just think it was surprising and shocking, but remember, Tennessee hasn't been good in a while, and to anger their boosters and their supporters would be a pretty fatal move. So it makes sense that it happened pretty quick. I just wish they would have given more foresight for all parties involved.
I agree. I think that obviously if you know that that information is out there, there's a better way to go about that vetting process. If you're even, I know in coaching that is very clandestine, particularly at the college level of who's talking to who, but if something of this nature and of such a controversial topic, obviously perhaps a little more transparency would have benefited both parties so that this could have been avoided before formal offers and negotiations started. It's interesting because you're right, with social media, these things happen so quickly that I think that a lot of colleges should consider and give pause to their hiring decisions based on prior innuendo or even allegations, whether they are necessarily fair or not, because I think that this was such a huge blow to college football and to the nation in general, what happened at Penn State, that anyone associated or touched by it is going to be affected with it forever. So you're right. They had to have known, and they did know, but it would have been nice if they showed a little more tact and transparency with making that offer. So who knows where this goes? You're right. Shiano didn't even have really a great stellar record in terms of his demeanor. Had issues at Rutgers for being overly aggressive and borderline abusive. Same thing in Tampa Bay. That's why he did not last long in that scenario. So it's kind of hard for you to necessarily root for the guy, but you're right. I mean, maybe a little due diligence on both parties would have been beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, Shiano is also the guy famous for, in his first NFL game, having players dive at the opposing players' knees during the victory celebration. So his character in general definitely didn't help the situation. Peyton Manning was accused of rubbing his privates on a trainer 20 years ago, but that was the one outlier to his entire career. So he had more of a benefit of the doubt, whereas Shiano's definitely acted out a lot and done a lot of really questionable things, including his treatment of Josh Freeman, who literally came around to be found out that he had mental illness issues, and Shiano wasn't understanding or even aware of that. So, in some ways, Shiano set himself up for this by being the way he is. But in other ways, the administration didn't help him. But hopefully it goes away soon, and I think we've seen the end of Shiano at a major program. So,
all right, moving on to lighter notes, lighter news. You and I both got a chance to see Justice League, and you and I have not spoken about it until now. We're keeping it fresh, keeping it super fresh for all you on AMP Premiere. Again, it's AMP Premiere, not AMP 1.
Premiere.
We renamed it AMP Premiere. Justice League, there's a lot, Franco, to unpack with this film. I don't know where you would like to start. Maybe let's start not necessarily with the beginning, but maybe a little bit of potpourri. And I think I want to start with Ben Affleck Batman, because that's the biggest story coming out of this. His performance in this was weird. You could easily tell where Zack Snyder directed and then where Joss Whedon directed based on the type of Batman you got. You got the angry Batman of Man of Steel in a very weird intro scene that happened to feature a very chatty and helpful to the exposition criminal that made no sense. And then you had the lighthearted moments with Wonder Woman and Batman trying to make a joke. It looked very much like, Franco, this is Ben Affleck's last Batman film. I don't know. He just doesn't seem like he's having fun. I don't blame Ben Affleck, to be honest, not to go too far off the Justice League film, because I think the Justice League film and Batman vs. Superman didn't give him anything worthwhile to necessarily do. So what were your thoughts about Ben Affleck and the Batman character in this film?
So I don't want to. I guess we'll announce spoilers first. But the opening sequence with the criminal being caught by Batman, then being allowed to walk away, was super surreal.
Yeah.
And also the villain exploding into a map of what no other villain of that type, the demi-demon or semi-demon, goblin, hobgoblin, whatever different D&D exposition you want to use there, had exploded and left any symbols anywhere. So it was a little odd. But yeah, I didn't mind later in the film Affleck, where it was a more relatable Affleck, where he was acknowledging that he's getting older and he's not superpowered. I think that's the way they probably should have went in the beginning of everything. Going back to the Batman vs. Superman movie. We just took a long time to get there, and it didn't really balance. And unfortunately, he ended up being kind of a drag on the rest of the cast, which did a decent job.
I think so. I mean, I think to tie a bow on the Batman part, I think I would have loved to have seen that character in a more Batman-centric film. I think you can do that character where he's not having to fight aliens, not having to fight Superman. Like, that would have been interesting. Like, we're never going to see it now, but why use Joker and Suicide Squad when you have an older Joker and older Batman? It's their final battle. You could do some like really interesting stuff with it. I think he got kind of sidearmed into these things, and they didn't really have much of a plan. Let's stick on characters. The characters I liked out of this film, I liked the Flash the most. I think I enjoyed him the most. I didn't enjoy the way they visually showed his powers. We can talk about this kind of CGI mess, I think, in this film. Cyborg was kind of a little bit of a hit and swing and a miss. I think there's potential, but I think they made him either too much of a brooding character. It was like too much like Batman. I would have liked to see maybe something a little different. Wonder Woman kind of got a downgrade from what she was in the first film, in the Wonder Woman solo film. Like, I wish they imported that character into Justice League. And then Aquaman was interesting. It was funny. It was okay. But I didn't like how everybody seemed to have two intros. It was like, okay, we already met Aquaman once in a bar, and then now he gets another intro of him saving a guy in a boat. But Franco, your thoughts on the characters that we got to see, and where you ranked them?
A ramble. That was.
I'm sorry. There's a lot to unpack. I warned you.
Yeah, let's start. Aquaman, definitely a part that would have been more fitting for Matthew McConaughey. In fact, they basically had Matthew McConaughey talk to fish. Yeah. Not that Jason Momoa did a bad job, and I definitely appreciate the diverse casting. But man, did they write that part for Matthew McConaughey? Like, every catchphrase he's ever uttered in every other movie was in that movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't mind the character. He was more background noise and didn't get a lot of exposition, so he was fine. I didn't mind Cyborg. I think they, kind of like Batfleck, they should have chosen one direction. If he was going to be brooding, he should have been brooding the entire movie instead of having him kind of switch directions immediately in the middle. Wonder Woman was fine. One of the bright spots of the film, I would have liked to see Wonder Woman interact with everybody else but Batman, because she was kind of limited to Batman. Flash was great. Definitely good comic relief. But yeah, the CGI and the way they made him run, not flattering, not even sensical. No human runs that way. So, I mean, even the CW show Flash got the running motion better. So hopefully they adjust that. If we ever see a DC movie again, I'm not sure we will.
Yeah, let's hold on that one until the end, and because that's a good question to end on. But I think Superman, I actually like this depiction of Superman. I think they finally got it in the right direction after two films of what, Superman should be a little bit more aloof. He kind of should be a little bit more playful. I liked Henry Cavill's depiction and acting in this better. Maybe the less is more motif works for the Superman character. I think Wonder Woman, the thing I didn't like about Justice League, and spoilers, they make a big point, and Ben Affleck, Batman, randomly kind of needles her about Steve Trevor and how she wasn't part of the world because of Steve Trevor. And it's like, you built up this independent, strong woman who clearly could, just do whatever she wants, and then you parlay that 100 years of her, or 60 years of her not doing anything because of Steve Trevor, when you contradict earlier scenes where, again, another sequence that seemed like, oh, Wonder Woman did a great job, we should add a Wonder Woman solo kick butt sequence. She's clearly out and about in the public, and she's not hiding. So I hated that moment where it was contradictory with her nature.
I mean, to be fair, timeline-wise, this happened after Batman vs Superman when she came back into the public. But yeah, you're right. I think if they would have explained it as, like, I saw the horrors of war, I killed war, and war still came back, and that's why I sunk down into not being in the public, that'd be a much more logical explanation instead of making it just Steve Trevor died. We all love Chris Pine, but not that much. Yeah, that was a difficult part to watch, and they kind of wasted some of the momentum, but I do think that was a tacked-on scene because of the success of Wonder Woman, and what probably wasn't in the original script.
No, I don't think so either. The villain Steppenwolf, not great, a mess, very bland, generic. I don't know if you felt like this because we're both comic book nerds, Franco. As I was watching it, I was in my mind going through old DC stories with the New Gods, the Mother Boxes, Darkseid, and I realized if I didn't know those things, I would not understand what is happening. Did you feel that way at all too?
Yeah, they didn't really explain the
No.
Mother Boxes. Didn't really, other than saying they destroy the world with some MacGuffin combining thing. They didn't give the whole history or why it's like the Darkseid or the different like entities that Steppenwolf's part of. He's part of one of 5 generals of Darkseid. Yeah, not really well explained, and the parademons aren't even explained either. They just kind of show up and that's it. Like they're kind of insecty, as opposed to being like the epitome of fear and they are basically the hallmarks of the destruction of worlds that they are in the comics.
Yeah. But the one interesting thing, they opened the door to Green Lantern coming back at some point.
Mm-hmm.
The film ends with Superman coming back, and we got a pointless, as I feel like we always see in comic books and movies and superhero movies in particular. Good guy comes back is bad for a while because he's confused, and I was like, this is stupid. I could have fast forwarded through all that. I felt like because again, there's no explanation as to why he would be that way. Other than we don't know what's going on in the Mother Box. And then the part where I literally laughed out loud in the theater was when Cyborg goes, "Oh no, the Mother Box was taken." I was like, the whole point of this film is to protect the Mother Boxes, and you all forgot about it for about 10 minutes while you were trying to fight Superman. No one was like, I'll hold on to the Mother Box, guys, or I'll keep it somewhere safe. That was the most hilarious part to me.
Yeah, that was bad storytelling. I didn't mind Superman coming back kind of not plugged into the world, if only because when they revived Zod using the same mechanism, he was mindless. So that kind of made sense, but having it be this huge fight where, again, they lost track of the one item that was the point of keeping was a bit ridiculous. Had Steppenwolf intervened and then stole the box while fighting all of them at one time, would have made a lot more sense.
Just to jump ahead since we're running out of showtime, so you mentioned, are we going to see another Justice League movie or DC movie? The ending, there's 2 end scenes. Spoiler: one was a cute kind of Flash versus Superman race, which I enjoyed.
Yeah.
The second one was actually I really enjoyed because it's Lex Luthor on a yacht and he brings aboard Deathstroke. And he's essentially paraphrasing that line of, maybe we should have our own league, which I was like, oh, Injustice League. And I was like, I wish they did that movie instead of Steppenwolf. Because it seems like this whole thing's out of order, start smaller-ish and then build up toward Darkseid, but whatever. I think we definitely get Wonder Woman 2. Yeah. I think we maybe get one more shot at a Justice League 2, and then I think everything is going to quietly die off. I don't think you're going to see Flash, Cyborg, or an Aquaman film.
I think we'll see Aquaman, if only because they started principal shooting.
Oh, they did. Then I guess you will. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we'll see Aquaman. I think we'll see Wonder Woman, and I don't know if we make a Justice League 2, to be honest with you. It really all depends on Ben Affleck, as scary as that sounds, because should he drop out, it's kind of hard to tie the universe together because he is the one thread. They basically made him Nick Fury in Marvel, where he's in every film, linking all of them as the one character. So, I mean, I guess Wonder Woman is kind of too, but Affleck has so far been like the basic backbone, and Alfred as well. So, we'll see what happens. I guess. I'm not confident. I think we see 2 more DC movies before it either reboots, like Amazing Spider-Man, or they keep going with it.
All right, that's fair. All right. Because I think we have to wrap up the show right now, right?
We can start the wrap-up process. We'll make it a long wrap-up.
We'll make it long. So give me, let's do one just because we always got to get fantasy news in. Mm-hmm. Give me one person you're sitting that's a quarterback and one quarterback you're going to start. We'll leave a little bit of fantasy news.
Definitely.
So who you sitting, who you starting in quarterback world?
I'm sitting Matthew Stafford because he's playing the Baltimore Ravens, and we've seen what the Ravens do to quarterbacks. Even though they're not having a great season offensively, they're a great defense. And Stafford hasn't been fantastic in the last few weeks. I'm definitely going to start, and this is something we wouldn't have said last year, Jared Goff at Arizona. Goff's played really well. Arizona's struggled. Tyrann Mathieu is not playing far back free safety. He's playing up front. So that's going to open the passing game in the long range. So Jared Goff start, Matt Stafford bench, and we've officially entered the twilight zone for fantasy football.
Yes, we have. Franco, what did you learn today?
I learned that you are not a big fan of Batfleck. And even though he's going to do his Irish goodbye on the Justice League, he's still going to be a friend of the show. And two, again, more on the touching subject of us not acknowledging outfit choices, I definitely wore a tie-dye dolphin shirt today, and you wore your tank top. And we made it through the entire intro without acknowledging either.
I know. I'm good for us. Good for us on the wardrobe front. Just accept us for who we are, Ant Premier. This is us. This is who you got.
All pajama shirt all the time. All right. What did you learn?
I learned that, Franco, I will never bench you, regardless of whether or not your performance starts to falter in your later years. You will never be benched. You are my franchise podcast and friend for life.
Thank you. And that's why we're called the BFF Show. Best friends forever.
For the BFF Show, my name is Brendan.
I'm Franco.
Have a great week.
Peace.